Welcome to session 6 of the We Are series. And if you've been tracking with me through all of these, you'll know that this was originally planned to be a 6-part series, but a little secret, I'm recording a 7th and final one for you all, in which I talk about commissioning you and pray for you. So there'll be one more session after this one. And depending on how your church leaders are using them, will depend on when you get to see it. But this is number 6 of this We Are series. That we are representatives of Jesus. We are apostolic. That we are family. That we are big people. These huge themes that we've taken. And that we are empowered, and that we are created for encounter. And in this last session, it's we are sent. Now I know I've touched that in many of the sessions, but this is really important to me. We are sent into a world of opportunity. And we live in this most extraordinary time, not just this recent season of COVID and the pandemic, but this most extraordinary time to be alive on the planet. Many of you will have heard a message of mine called "What Time Is It?" When I asked the question, "What time is it?" because the sons of Issachar, they understood the times and therefore they knew what to do. And in many respects, that's where I'm going to take you in this session. Actually give you some things to do, identify some starter tasks, if you like, on a road to being a revivalist, a reformer, a creative, or a social reformer, or a government leader. You see, when we understand the times, we know what to do. What time is it? I could talk about us as a generation. We are a very privileged generation. I would suggest to you that we are an identity generation. We've talked a little bit about that in this series, but we are an identity generation. Perhaps no other generation in the history of the church has spent so much time in reading books about sonship and the Father's heart, or been to inner healing sessions or Father Heart conferences. We are an identity generation, and I love that. We're also a destiny generation. We're a generation that want to know why we're alive. We see the coaching schools and such like that happen, and the just put in a search for destiny and it's thousands of replies, and destiny has become very much a part of our Christian language, even though it didn't originate there and was in years gone by, to be honest, more associated with New Age, and destiny was about fate, but not anymore. We've really made that a part of our thinking and our teaching. So we're a destiny generation. We're also a heaven on earth generation, a generation that desires to see heaven on earth. We, I think, see the evidence of that in the teaching, the schools of ministry, the conferences, the healing events that we go to. And we really have got that appetite for the supernatural. And of course, we're a kingdom generation, wanting to see the expansion of the influence of the King of Kings to every sphere of influence. And of course, the evidence for me there is so much teaching about the 7 mountains, or what I prefer to call the 7 spheres of influence. That's our generation. But then taking that a little bit further and saying, what time is it? You know the verse, Esther 4:14, you know it well, where Mordecai says to Esther, "Who knows if you have not attained royalty for such a time as this?" But there's a phrase before that in the verse which I think we sometimes overlook. If you remain silent, relief and deliverance will come from someone else. You see, we've been born for such a time as this. And if we remain silent, if we don't play our part, relief and deliverance will come from others. You see, we are apostolic, aren't we? We are family. We are empowered. We are big people, and we are created for an encounter. And when we know all of that, it begins to lead us. This great summing up, this kind of almost climax of this teaching is we are sent. We are sent into a world of great, great opportunity. Yes, once again, I've drawn a quadrant. This is one that I've been drawing for some time. You see, the first thing I want to say to you is, what time is it? It's revival time. How do I know that? Because we live in the days of the greatest opportunity. Just take numbers alone for a moment. Forget the opportunity of this season, the pandemic. But the sheer numbers of people alive on the planet. We are approaching 8 billion. I believe it took until 1890 for there to be 1 billion recorded on the planet. And in a very short period of time, relatively, we are now 8 billion. The next billion people will be born in between 12 and 15 years. What does that say to you? It says to me opportunity. When there were, I think, 3 billion people on the planet, 30% lived in cities. That's approximately 900 million. And now, with 8 billion people on the planet, 50% live in cities. That's 4 billion people. What opportunity. We live in the days of the greatest opportunity, and for me, that's opportunity of numbers, and that equals revival time. And for me, my definition of revival, I love a couple of them. I love one that I think came from John Mark Comer or John Tyson, and that is revival is when renewal goes viral. I like that because revival always has to include individuals. I also would say that revival is when ones to millions of people come into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, his person, his power, his presence, and his principles. You see, revival isn't a series of meetings. We've had that description in the past. No. Revival is when millions come into a relationship with Jesus Christ. And the opportunity is there. And therefore, I want to suggest to you, it is revival time. There is an invitation for revival. And a revival, I would suggest, not a series of meetings, but a revival that never ends. The kind of revival that transforms entire nations and continents. You'll also see I've written up there, it's Reformation time. How can I say that? Well, take a look at our world. We live in the days of the greatest change, extraordinary pace of change. Our grandparents were pretty much content with a washing machine for life, but now we change everything. There's even almost an appetite for change. We want the next phone. We want to know what it will do that the old one didn't do. There is a pace of change and some of it is quite extraordinary. And of course, the fact that during this pandemic, all of us have been able to enjoy technology and remote and online teaching and church and training. We are beneficiaries of the pace of change. But that pace of change says something to me. There is an appetite for change. What used to be resisted is now anticipated and welcomed. I actually believe that the great paradigm shifts of our planet, which are really kind of like monumental change, were all intended for the gospel. Discovering the earth is round and not flat meant that the gospel could be taken all around the world. The printing press, well, that meant that the Bible could be printed for everyday people, that no longer was it just the priest that could read. Or electricity, that great change which enabled radio and television and the preaching of the gospel, and of course now today, the internet. And I would suggest that those great paradigm shifts, their purpose was for the gospel. And so we live in the days of the greatest change, the pace of change. It is quite astronomical. And therefore, for me, it's an invitation to a reformation. And not a repeat of a reformation from 500 years ago, but a reformation which unites the bride and transforms the whole of society. We are sent into this world of great opportunity, this world that is inviting us in for revival, inviting us in, I suggest, for reformation. And reformation is my definition when the whole of society comes under the influence of the power, the person, the presence, and the principles of Jesus Christ, regardless of their relationship with him. That's a reformation. And I believe that we need a reformation. And then you'll see I have up there Renaissance time or creative time. Oh, once again, we live in the days of the greatest access to creativity, don't we? The great Renaissance of several centuries ago sadly ended in secular humanism. We need a new Renaissance. And for me, a Renaissance is a new expression of creativity and inventiveness which is used to bring glory to God. We were created by the Creator to be creative, to use our creativity to point mankind back to God. Not to say we did it without God, not secular humanism, but truly to God be the glory. And we need that. We need a Renaissance that gives glory to God, a revival that never ends, and a reformation that unites the bride and transforms society. Not the reformation that divided the bride, but one that unites the bride. And we also live in the days of geopolitical shifts and shaking. And for me, that is an invitation for a Judeo-Christian government to get back in place in the nations of our world. What time is it? It's revival time, reformation time, Renaissance time, and Judeo-Christian government time. That would be my suggestion to you. You see, we are sent into a world of this kind of opportunity. This is our time. This is our moment on the stage. And it's all part of our apostolic assignment to bring heaven to earth and to expand the influence of the King. That's why we become apostolic first rather than pastoral first, and kingdom first, not church first. And remember, if you put second things first, you get neither first nor second. But if you put first things first, you get first and second. That's why Jesus could say, seek first the kingdom, and all these things shall be added unto you. What a moment we live in. Who knows if you have not attained royalty for such a time as this. It feels as though there's a momentum. The changes, the shifts in our world, the changes and shifts in our church, the awareness of individuals of our identity and our destiny, the desire of a generation to make a difference and make a mark. There's something happening, and we are an apostolic people at, I want to suggest to you, an apostolic moment in history. And this is our moment. And I want to say to you that we are sent into a world of opportunity because you make a difference. I love the teaching. I love the motivation of the 7 mountains of influence, but I prefer the spheres of influence language. And I'm not sure that there's only 7. I think there's more. But the reason I prefer the spheres of influence is because it feels accessible for everyone, for all of you to access and to realize that you have a sphere of influence and you're sent into it. You're sent. I believe that what should happen is every one of us on Monday morning, after we've been to our apostolic family church on a Sunday, are able to sit in our office, in our classroom, in our hospital, in our cab of a delivery driver, working in a restaurant, a homeschool mum, whoever we are, whatever we do, wherever we go. It is my desire that everyone sits in that position on Monday morning and knows, I've been sent. I was sent out yesterday. You don't need to be sent to the corners of the earth. You can be sent to the corner of the street where the church is, to your office, and know I'm a sent one. I'm an ambassador of Jesus Christ, a representative of him. We are sent, and you make a difference. Yes, you do. And I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you in this last session. Now, you might not have worked out which one of those you most resonate to. That's okay. And let me emphasize, I'm not just talking about the church or Christian activity. I'm talking about revivalist doctors and Reformation teachers and Renaissance movie makers and Judeo-Christian governors in local councils and in social reform ministries. I'm talking about the whole range of opportunities in our world, because remember, Habakkuk 2:14 said, the whole earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of God. Revival knowledge, Reformation knowledge, Renaissance knowledge, Judeo-Christian government knowledge. So that's why I like the spheres of influence. I'm not just talking, as I say, about ministers in the church. I'm talking about teachers and doctors and nurses and cooks and chefs and movie stars and movie makers and graphic designers and gardeners and builders and everyone. You have a sphere of influence and you make a difference. I passionately want to see the erasing of the secular sacred divide. It shouldn't be there. Every one of you, the only issue is where you draw your paycheck. You're all in ministry. You are all first-class ministers of the gospel of the kingdom. So let's have a look at this, revivalists. I want to just give you some starting points. Revivalists for me, they're not just the evangelist type revivalists. They're not just a healing revivalist. They are people who bring life where there is death and light where there is darkness. And you might be a revivalist doctor working in an ER or an intensive care, bringing life where there is death. Here's my challenge to you. If you're saying to yourself, where do I start? I want to say to you, study history. Because what we want is a generation who study history and see what God has done and are determined to re-dig the wells of revival. This great country that I'm sitting in right now, the United Kingdom, we have so many wells of revival. Europe, wells of revival, and of course, right the way across the world. Re-dig the wells, study history. If you're thinking, where do I start on revival? How do I bring life where there is death and light where there is darkness? Study history. Find that person, that personality, that character. Read the biographies and be determined to begin to redig the wells of revival. Or perhaps your call is reformation, to be a reformer, to reform areas of society. I think of some of the greats that have gone before, those that established, prison ministries, people like John Howard in this country, or improved standards of nursing, Florence Nightingale. Or the children's homes that we have seen, or any of those areas of our society where there was reformation, the abolition of slavery, those elements kick in here. And they overlap, of course, with social justice. But, reformation in the finance industry, in education, in healthcare, in prisons, even in the world of movies and arts and entertainment and sport. What do? Identify your sphere. Spend some time identifying your sphere of influence. Now, maybe you're already in it, in which case you can start to look at what would reforming this sphere of influence look like. What would reforming the finance industry look like? Education, healthcare, prisons, social work. The banking industry, the building industry, it is all open to come under the influence of the principles, the power, the person, and the presence of Jesus. And so I would say, pray into it, identify your sphere of influence, and begin to ask yourself, what would reformation look like in my sphere of influence? Or as I said down here, social justice, and I do include in there the wider area of government, but really engage in the battle. Actually, if you believe that you're called to politics, for me that is in many respects about social justice, obviously on a larger and a national scale, establishing the laws of society that maintain the freedom and at the same time the peace and the security and the prosperity of a region, a city, or a nation. But what I would say is find a place to engage in the battle. If that's what you're called to do, get involved. If it is a political party, get involved in that political party. If it's an area of more obvious, the social justice, sex trafficking or prisoners or any of those kind of areas, engage in the battle. And you can start small. You don't have to dream of being at the top of the mountain. That's the beauty of the spheres of influence, because you make a difference. And that's the key. One by one, you make a difference. And then down here, the creatives and the entrepreneurs. there are a number of places to start here, but one of them I would say is pray for fresh revelation. Pray for that. Other things you can do is find people of like mind. Some of the greats, there were, often a couple of them working in the garage in California that ends, we end up with Apple or Hewlett Packard and things like that. It began the couple of people who got together, who somehow partnered their gifts together. But I want to say this to pray for fresh revelation. Pray for the answers to the world's problems that we have right now. We shouldn't be just letting people who don't know God come up with solutions to the earth's problems. It's great that they are, but we should all be involved in this. See, all I want to do is encourage you here that there are ways where you can just start. You can start simply and you can't start small. You don't have to get a PhD in an area and climb to the top of that mountain of influence. Find your sphere of influence and start stepping into it, whether it's from revival point of view, reformation point of view, social justice point of view, or creativity. Because remember, you have everything you need. You're made in his image. We have the mind of Christ. You're filled with the Spirit. And we have Christ in us, the hope of glory. And we're big people. We know who we are. We know why we're alive. We know where we're going. And we know the influence of our lives. You see, we're sent. We are sent into a world of incredible opportunity. And you make a difference. One of the things that we have the privilege of as Christians is to make declarations. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. And each one of these you can begin to turn into declarations. You study the revival history, the wells, you can start declaring, do it again. Do that again. Raise up another John Howard. Raise up another William Wilberforce. Do it again. Do it again. Another Wesley, another Spurgeon, another Whitefield. Do it again. And you can declare. Or the area of reformation, you can start to look at your sphere of influence and you can look and start to declare the righting of wrongs, the establishment of business principles that are kingdom principles in your sphere of influence. And you can begin to take this little starting point and make it into a declaration, into a lifestyle. And the same with creativity. Look to see what problems need solving. Pray for fresh revelation and start to declare that those things can be changed. And of course, in the area of social justice and the wider government of our nations, to really be declaring and praying for Judeo-Christian principles to be established once again. And where in the Western world so much of our government was built upon those principles, we want to see those principles restored, don't we? You see, we're sent. Jesus said, as the Father sent me, so I send you. He sent us into the whole world. He sent us to disciple nations. He gave us all power and all authority. He said that we are his ambassadors. That's what he said. We are sent. And you make a difference. Honestly, I think that many of us at times struggle with that. Struggle with whether or not we have made a difference. And that's why this session is really to encourage you that one by one at a time, one situation, one workplace, one desk, one opportunity, you make a difference. A little while ago on my Facebook page, one of my ex-prisoners wrote something. Over 20 years after he had been in my prison, he wrote something. And he wrote about the influence and the impact that I and one of my staff had on his life. And it was very, very moving. Just that one person. I guess he's now in his early 40s. And I was so encouraged by that. Just warmed my heart. The reality is there are probably thousands of stories that each one of us have where we've never known the difference that we made. But you make a difference. It's our prayer, isn't it? On earth as it is in heaven. In other words, we're praying to make a difference. We're living to make a difference. And every one of us can do that. That's why I love the principle of the spheres of influence. Because a mum can stand at a school gate and can chat to somebody else at a school gate, who's married to somebody who's maybe very influential in an area of our society, and can have an impact on their life. See, every one of us can make a difference. This is the last before number 7, when I'm going to commission you. So I just want to wrap up some of these things together and just tie them together. You see, we are representatives of Jesus. We are apostolic because he's the first apostle. We are family and you belong. I want to encourage every one of you to make sure in these coming weeks and months that awareness of being seen, known, loved and valued, of belonging, is really a part of your experience and the experience of those around you. We are big people. You are significant. Yes, you are significant. We are big people. I love the teaching that we're not about building big church, but raising big people, because big people change cities. I love that. And we're empowered. Yes, we're empowered. And you have everything you need, made in the image of God, filled with the Holy Spirit. We have the mind of Christ, and Christ in you, the hope of glory. And we were created for encounter. You carry God's presence. What a privilege that is. No longer do we need the one priest to go into the Holy of Holies. Every one of us carries with us everywhere we go the Holy of Holies. Isn't that extraordinary? And here we are. We are sent into a world of opportunity. You make a difference. I want you just to meditate on that for a moment. You see, we're apostolic. We've been sent by Jesus. The church for me should be an apostolic family, a place where people encounter God, become a part of a family, and are trained and equipped and sent out to bring change to their world. Jesus is the first apostle, and he sent us. And he has declared the kingdom is at hand. Let's be apostolic people, pursuing the kingdom in everything we do. Father, I ask that everybody watching this today, everybody will be encouraged to know that they make a difference. Father, stir them up. I pray, even prompt them. Let them see that they are a revivalist first, or a reformer first, or a creative first, or a pursuer of social justice. There are many areas where you will overlap, but Father, I ask that you would really stir people up to action, to study revival history, to engage in the battle, to pray into their sphere of influence, to ask for fresh revelation to solve the problems of this earth. Father, would you touch everyone watching this right now, that everyone will know that they are apostolic, that everyone will know that they belong, that everyone will know that they have everything they need, that everyone will know that they carry your presence, that everyone will know that they make a difference, whoever they are, wherever they go, and whatever they do, in your name. Father, bless everyone watching, I pray, for the honor of your name. Amen.